Hello everyone, Allie here, and welcome to the Gold Mine. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode at Allie's Treasure Trove. Today we are getting into episode number 36 of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles playthrough, here with Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve in-game episode number 4, getting into Trial Part 2. So I believe where we left off last time was that Kazuma, who is our opponent prosecutor at the moment, while of course we are defending Van Zieks against the murder accusations, for poor Inspector Gregson. I'm still so sad about it. It's just so weird. Just so weird. I would never have thought anything would have happened to Gregson, but here we are, and seems like things are unraveling a bit. Gregson being the detective who was able to get a key piece of evidence for the Professor case 10 years ago. And I don't know, I'm suspicious of what's going on here. So, last time I believe we left off, we did summon 2 members of the Redheaded League. Those 2 people at the start of the first investigation episode. That Sholmes got mad because they wouldn't let him into the Redheaded League because they foiled his plan to sneak in undercover with his red hair. They just recognized him because Sholmes still looks like Sholmes, but just red. And he got them arrested for something shifty that they were doing. So they're in police custody. They're being summoned as witnesses here to talk about the Redheaded League or something like that. So I'm really curious how this is all going to connect. Of course, this case definitely meat and potatoes here is Gregson was murdered and we have to defend Van Zieks, but what happened to Mrs. Vigil's husband? That just kind of, that's a plot line that we don't know where that went. He apparently got fired from being the chief warden at the prison for helping the professor attempt a jailbreak. I mean, I'll have to look at the court record again. We can actually do that now. Based on what it said, it looks like he was dismissed. All right, for violating this clause. So what was it again? Aiding and abetting the escape from this prison of convict just prior to his execution. So it seems like I that's the thing. I have so many questions because it seems like the professor actually escaped, and then they faked the autopsy. But then why was he in the graveyard? Was he hiding? I don't know. So all kinds of questions. But what happened to her husband? That's what we were initially starting off. Like, oh, investigating missing persons. Her husband's just gone. Oh, he actually hasn't worked here in 10 years, and he's been lying to her the whole time. So what does he do? I mean, he has the same hair. He has the same hairstyle of this dude, the witness, Gossip, or whatever his name was, that looks like he's been punched in the face a lot recently. His lips huge and swollen, and his nose looks broken, and he has like it looks like he has like rope burn or something around his neck, but that makes no sense. So maybe he got choked out or something. But I don't know. It's like, so is he like a street beggar? But how does he pull in so much money if that is Mrs. Vigil's husband? I don't know. So many questions. So that's something unresolved as of yet. And then the Redheaded League. What's up with that? That gang of redheads that it seems like a scam. Putting articles in the newspaper, limited amount of people, only can be redheaded, and you get paid to just exist as a member of the league. Well, I don't know, that sounds like some weird contracting of nefarious criminals under the notion of like, oh, this is just, we're just hanging out. This is our little redhead club. It's actually like a weird gang of like criminals for hire. I don't know. So we'll find out more of that hopefully here. But anyways, it is 12:33 p.m. in the defendant's antechamber. Like I said, they're summoning those 2 witnesses. Oh, there you are, Odo.
What kept you, my dear fellow?
The court case? Hello, Mr. Sholmes. Gina? You should have said hi to Gina first. She said hi first. You sure about what you said, ne? That the boss, you know, actually died the day before. It's pretty hard to swallow. Yes! I was shocked by the revelation too, Gina!
As was I, possibly more shocked than both of you.
It's not a competition, Mr. Sholmes. Also, how did Mr. Sholmes sneak into the gallery? Because it's supposed to be members of the police and the judiciary. Now, how did he get in? But I was more shocked than all of you put together.
And this is the autopsy report in question, is it?
Yes, it's strange that there's no time of death noted. And I suppose there's a simple explanation, or perhaps it was a deliberate omission. Oh dear! If it was deliberate, it puts me in mind of the last case we worked on, Dr. Scythe. I know. Anyway, it seems that on the day before Lord Van Zieks discovered his body, Inspector Gregson was investigating the Redheaded League, so perhaps something happened with them. Come to think of it, You had trouble with those league men too, didn't you, Mr. Sholmes? You were taken in by their trick.
No! Naturally, I wasn't taken in, as you put it. My sleuthhound interest was merely piqued slightly by the rare scent of a weekly £4 income.
And that scent masked the underlying scent of deception, I suppose. Yeah, you get paid £4 a week to just exist. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. This is just ancient OnlyFans. What? Who said that? The two criminals in question are the pair we saw being arrested yesterday, aren't they? And Mr. Sholmes is sweet, I mean. That's right, Suze. And it was me what took him in. Thanks to a tip-off by a good law-abiding citizen.
Indeed. Yours truly.
So it's going to be that pair in the witness stand next, is it? Something doesn't quite make sense to me, though. The day before Inspector Gregson was found, you hadn't had trouble with the Redheaded League yet, had you? Why would the inspector have been investigating them?
Well, the likely explanation would be that Gregson's own sleuthhound interest was piqued by the rare scent of a weekly £4 income.
Don't Tom with the same brush as you, Sholmes? Yes! Oh. I assumed since Susato was on screen that it was Susato, but it's not. Yes, well, then there's the whole issue of Inspector Gregson being investigated by Lord Van Zeeks for some reason. The Reaper! The Redheaded League! Inspector Gregson! Lord Van Zeeks! Keyword! And Kazuma. And I feel as though he knew we'd arrive at this point somehow. Gosh, I think you're right! What's he really trying to achieve here today? Kazuma wants to reinvestigate the professor case, I feel.
And all the answers will soon be revealed. Observe the time, my dear fellow.
The Sholmes has already big-brained everything.
This recess will be over shortly.
Yes, you're right. Kazuma was determined that he should be the one to prosecute this trial. And he was determined that I should take the defense. Just what is it that he's hoping to make me see, I wonder? And I get the feeling we're a long way from the end of this trial yet. Are you ready then, Miss Susato? Yes! All right, 1 o'clock.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closed court hearing of Brock Van Zeeks, here present who stands accused of murder. Now then, Prosecutor Sogi.
My lord?
Have you summoned the witnesses as requested?
Yes, the two members of the Redheaded League who planned and carried out the deception. They arrived not long ago from the local prison by police carriage.
Very good. Bailiff, usher the two men into the courtroom.
These two men are currently being held by police on suspicion of attempted extortion. You may omit your occupations, but state your names now for the court.
I am Fabien de Rousseau, a descendant of the great Rousseau family from Nice, en France.
And my name is Peppino de Rossi. I like to cry like, I am a dolphin. I am the third son of the great Familia de Rossi, the landowners of Napoli.
The two men first became acquainted at a boarding school for European nobility.
Those who graduate from Tennessee are the future leaders of Europe. But, do you have any idea how boring it is to be born with noble blood? Hello. I make it my mission to get the better of the world by employing the little gray cells of my brain. That is all I'm trying to do, huh? So, that's the only reason for this whole grand deception you've been carrying out? Oui, you could say that. Je suis bored, so I make people steal from each other, yeah? Not bad, eh? I has the grand ideals, but I have the petty plans. This strange combination is at the charm of the hilarious brothers. See, Capo?
Alright, so I guess the guy on the left is the boss, huh? Like, maybe you shouldn't call me a capo in a court of law. I know what that means. I've seen half of JoJo Goldenwind.
Listen to me, Pepino. I have two things to say to you. Hey, Chair, you about to tell me one of your grandi anecdotes? Viva!
I don't know how Italian sounds.
Firstly, I want you to stop calling me this Capo. And secondly, we are not the hilarious brothers. This is serious business. Cibello, there it is! The Capo's trumpa card! The furrowed brow! It is deep, Capo! The furrow and the meaning of your words!
Alright, we got Mafia Boss in court. Just making French McGilded. Bonjour. That was horrible.
The court has been led to believe that under the banner of the Redheaded League, you have conspired to swindle money from unsuspecting members of the public. Is this true?
Oui, c'est ça.
And what exactly was the nature of this deception by which you plan to defraud?
Alors, I will explain it. No, Capo! Leave it to me! As you see, we both have the vivid hair, no? At school, we will tease for this without pity. The Capo here, he was many a time behind the schoolhouse crying like the Trevi fountain. Eeeeee!
You guys are gonna hate this audio for this video.
Those dogs, one day the world will respect as redheads. And every night it will bury his head on his pillow and wait for... C'est bien, Pepino, enough. Now we'll explain the rest. Oui, je suis fraud. J'aime le fraud. J'ai le hair rouge. Je parle petit français. Oh, the first step was the newspaper advertisement. About 1 week before the plan was put into operation, we listed the same notice in every paper in London.
Yes, we saw that notice. It was this one, I believe, entitled To the Redheaded League.
Oui, c'est ça. I am honored that you have seen it.
It states that the only condition for joining the league is having flame-colored hair, and that if you satisfy the interview panel and are admitted into the league, you could receive a weekly income of £4. On the date specified, the red-headed hopefuls gathered in droves at a park specified in the advertisement. And from each person present, this pair took an application fee of 5 shillings.
And with the money to France, it was a plan most elegant, no?
Oh, so there actually is no league, it's just 2 rich people be like, yo. Let's see, that's actually kind of... I'm oddly impressed with this scheme here. Yeah, you just charge everybody an application fee. That makes sense, and then just no one gets admitted. They did say only 1 person, so if the majority of people get told no and you can't find the 1 person that was admitted, if there's a ton of people that show up, it just makes sense. Ah, that's actually... Alright, drink break. Got some pumpkin spice in here. No, it was most dishonorable. I'm not saying it was honorable, Cosmo. I'm just saying I think they're actually pretty smart here, I think.
But to be frank, I'm stunned anybody was foolish enough to be taken in by such an obvious trick.
The park was described by one witness as choked with red-headed folk, like a coaster's orange barrow.
And the day on which all these gentlemen gathered to apply was the day before the victim was discovered. Crucially, these 2 men spoke face to face with every single person present that day. Oui! I have seen more red-headed people in 1 day than I will see in the rest of my life. See! And now, every time I see the Capo's hair, I feel sick to my stomach! Anyway, why have we been summoned here today? Sorry. The date for our trial is not until tomorrow, I was told. Naturally, neither of these men have been told any details about this trial.
They've only been shown this photograph.
Very good. So, Mr. Deverso and Mr. Derossi, you will now give your formal testimony for the court on the subject of the gentleman pictured in this photograph.
Of course, we are always ready to help with the law. Lies.
The dude's just eating spaghetti. Oh my goodness. So these two are the same age, right? Right? If they met in boarding school, that means they went to school together. The guy on the right looks like he's 12. Why are there so many children in this game? How is that a 25-year-old?
Peppino De Rossi. Fabian De Rosso. Beppo.
Really roughly aged. Daily Vigil. That's... They got the same weird hair things going on. His eyebrows are too thick, but if he just didn't pluck them, if he just let them grow out a bit, they'd look like that. He's not doing some well. Alright.
We had more than 1,000 red-headed people assemble in the park on Lime Street that day. But I don't recall the man in this photograph. Hey, Capo? No, I don't remember him. Obviously, he's dead now, but I assure you, he was not in the park. Allora, this victim is nothing to do with us. You have a lot to answer for, Peppino. It is your fault that we got caught in the first place. Capo!
You've given sworn testimony that this man in the photograph was not present. Can you be certain?
Oui, I am quite certain. We did not interview this man. Nobody looking like this came to the park. This I can promise.
It must be noted that you have been arrested for a grand deception, however. Accordingly, this court has little confidence in your assurances.
Nova, with this attitude, we get to nowhere, huh?
He's really a sulkin.
He's really a sulkin now.
This confidential document was obtained directly from Scotland Yard. It records an entry from the inspector's private diary dated the day before the incident. It reads, Lime Street, Redheaded League, undercover.
Nah, I have the answer. Maybe there was another similar event in the park on the day in question, eh?
That is ridiculous. There's no question that Inspector Gregson was investigating the Redheaded League. Which means, it's quite possible that's when he was killed.
Very well. The defense may proceed with the cross-examination now.
Ah, yes, my lord.
Hold it!
1,000 people? That's a very big crowd.
It was quite a spectacle. Redheads had all come from all over the capital. See, the Capo here has the magnetismo and animal, eh? Nobody else could attract us so many people. If I could be born again, I would be the Capo. All those people wanted was the money, Peppino, the £4 per week.
Are you suggesting that you spoke personally with all 1,000 applicants?
Oui, that we did, because every one of them paid us 5 shillings. We take out the names, and we take out the money, and we take out the address as well. Then I told them we take some days to let them know by a post, infinito, maybe 2 minutes a person. We start early in the morning, and we stop late in the night.
So, you earned 5,000 shillings in one day? That's a small fortune. Who'd have thought there were 1,000 such gullible redheads in London to start with? One of whom was a great detective with chemically altered hair.
Hold it!
He doesn't look at all familiar.
No, I don't think so. And this was a wig, eh? He was trying to trick us. I do not like people who are trying to trick other people. Says the con artist.
If between them they interviewed 1,000 people with red hair, it would be unreasonable to expect them to remember every face.
No, no, signore, I may be small, but my memory is very large. I never forget a thing. In my opinion, I do not think this man was in the park.
But he's not going to give the court a definite, it seems.
Hey, Capo, you didn't see a man like this, huh?
No, I don't remember him.
And obviously he's dead now. Oh, you're dead. Wonder how that happened.
But according to what you've said, you spoke with 1,000 or more people that day.
Oui, that's true. My eyes were burning by the end of the day.
Surely then, you can't actually remember every single face. How are you so certain that this particular man wasn't present?
Normally, the red hair is very distinctive, eh? But not when you have 1,000 redheads crowding around. Then it is just an eyesore. But if there was some other information you could have given us, maybe then we would recall.
That is not the line, Peppino.
Remember, we do not remember him. We are sure of that fact, huh? If there was a man with a red hairpiece, but his mustache did not match the color, then I do not think I could have forgotten him.
Cosmo said these two had only been shown that photograph and they'd been told nothing else at all. Well, what if I fed them just one other detail about the victim? For example, his fish and chips. I can certainly appreciate that just knowing the man had red hair wouldn't help you remember in this situation. But what if I told you that the man was always munching on a packet of fish and chips? Do you remember a man who was eating incessantly?
Not really. I was looking only at the ads of the applicants. I wouldn't have noticed the fish and chips any more than the caviar and smoked salmon. Or the spaghetti! Me, I love the spaghetti!
Really? I had no idea.
Tell them again what you said before, Peppino. Si, Capo, si! And I say it again and again!
Alright, so obviously it's not the fish and chips. I would have thought, I mean, that's what I noticed about Gregson. Huh, I mean, I'm gonna go through and press, and then obviously we gotta go back. I want to see what Susanto says at the end. But then obviously we'll go back and provide a different one.
Allora, the victim is nothing!
Hold it!
My name is Mario!
I've only ever played like half of one Mario game in my life. But we only have your word for that. It was Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii, because I liked it. I wanted it because of the cute star on the cover. It's like, Mommy, Daddy, I need it! It's got a cute star on it! And then I got stuck like halfway in. It was fun though, but I mean, it was fine. I enjoyed it, but I don't feel the need to play every single Mario game. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing out on something, but I don't know. Maybe because I didn't grow up with it, that was like the only thing I had. It was just Super Mario Galaxy, which apparently it's expensive, so cool, but... Is that weird? Let me know if you guys are like hooked on Mario, if you think I'm a weirdo for not being hooked on Mario, down in the comments down below.
See, but what else can we do, huh?
This voice is fun. Like I said, it's probably, you guys probably hate it. But I like it. True.
Nufa, we are not having much of fun these days. First we are arrested, then we are shown a horrible picture of a dead man. And now you question every single thing we say. We are the victims, eh? Hey, Capo!
No, you were caught carrying out a plot to swindle hundreds of innocent people.
You had to bring that up, eh? It's not fair. Hey, Capo?
Part of me doesn't believe that there's not an actual Redheaded League. I feel like it is like a criminal network and they just swindled people here to see if they can pick up anybody else. I don't know. We'll see.
Hold it!
'Cause how is he the capo if there's only two of them, you know? I don't know. What do you mean by that?
Cavolo, you promised not to say, hey, Capo? After we had taken all the money that day, we should have left the country. That was my plan. I left the purchasing of the tickets for the ferry to Dunkerque to my companion here. I was like, is this some French word? I don't know what it is. And then I'm like, I don't know what that is. But they bought them for the wrong day. Oops. See, but there's an easy mistake to make, huh? The 31st. Oh, I have no sympathy for you. We were an all day late for the boat because of your stupidity. And it's only because of this that the so-called great red-headed detective caught us. Capo, you know what I think? This is the work of God. There is a holy punishment, eh? Peppino, for the last time. This is not only punishment. This is only your fault. Ah! Don't blame God for your unholy mistakes. You are making mistake with anger. Maybe I make a mistake, but when it's time to eat the pasta, no one is a faster. And I've seen the evidence. They haven't told us much we didn't already know. What do you think, Mr. Naruto? Well, if it was in the inspector's diary, it seemed likely that he must have gone to Lime Street that day. And yet, these two both claim they didn't see him. Which means they clearly murdered him, right? I have to say, they don't appear to be telling lies. Well, they are experts in deception, don't forget. Sounding plausible is their specialty. They may be lying simply to avoid being implicated in this case as well. Surely if they were truly experts in deception, they wouldn't have been caught. Well, yes, you do have a point there. It seems to me like we need more information. Definitely! Alright, it was press, and then there was the speech pop-up. Whee! That is not the line, Peppino. There was a man with the Redheaded, but his mustache didn't match the color. Then I do not think I could have forgotten him. Well, that's true. Gregson's sideburns stick out from under the... Dude, give him his name. And I certainly appreciate that just knowing the man had red hair wouldn't help you remember in this situation. But what if I told you that the man's name was Gregson? The man in the photograph is a Monsieur Gregson. Yes. Names, they are boring. I do not listen to any of them. No. It was not a real interview, huh? It was just for a show. Why would I remember the names? That's right, this changes nothing. The man in the photograph was not there, as we have already said. I see.
It seems there's little to be gained from pursuing this point further.
Doesn't again what you said before, Peppino. See, Capo, see! I say it again and again! Alright, so let's... One more time, I can't not leave that unpressed. He was not in the park. Je parle français, he was not in the park. Il n'est pas dans le parc. I can certainly appreciate that just knowing the man had red hair wouldn't help you remember in this situation. And what if I told you that the man in the red hairpiece was actually a detective? The man in the photograph, a detective? Yes. It would appear he found your notice in the paper suspicious and decided to investigate incognito. Sorry, but this changes nothing. Oh, you got something to say, Peppino? What's up, Peppino? Excuse me, Peppino. Something to add, Mr. De Rossi? Jesse, I am always adding something. Parmesan, olive oil, pepper. What I mean is, did you not agree with your friend's last remark by any chance?
Nah, what did he just say? About the detective? Yes, that. Obviously, Peppino knows he was a detective. Oh, about the detective! Keep your mouth shut, Peppino. You have said enough already. But why, Capo? What is the problem? There was a man who said, I am an inspector from Scotland Yard. What?
Good lord!
Why is he so small? When there's multiple stooges in the witness stand, one of them always has to be unreasonably small. I feel almost, I mean, I can go back and count, but it seems like nearly every case in these two games, there has been someone on the witness stand with a box. All right. The small Skulkin brother. Olive Green, this guy. The demon child from Bohemia. The one case didn't have a trial. Yeah, the Tale of the Speckled Band, there was no trial. So we gotta think, 4 more. Perhaps in the intro cases, nobody was on the box. Alright, so that leaves, what other things does that leave? That leaves the first Natsume trial. Was anybody on a box in that trial? No. The Gross Romantics, no. Ah, yes, yes. Mrs. Garrett was on a box. Alright, one more trial. What's the trial that we're missing here? So, scrap the intro trials and the Speckled Band. What trial are we missing? This past trial. Is anybody on a box in the Hairbrained trial? Let me know in the comment section down below, but more, obviously, not every single one, like I had first proclaimed, you know, being a little obtuse there. So not every single one, but more than haven't had, for sure. There's so many people of small stature in this game. Hey, my name is Peppino, I'm 25 and 1.5 tall, eh? I do not grow vertical, I grow horizontal to contain more pasta, eh?
Order! Explain this volte-face in your testimony, witness.
It's simple. The man who was at the box said to us that he was an inspector. There was no such man. My dear, what do you say, Capo? Have you forgotten, eh? I have forgotten nothing. Nobody likes this game to the park. Basta, Capo, basta. You beat me at the many things, but not two. The memory and the meals. Like I said, when it's time to eat the pasta, no one is a faster. But you are inferior to me in every other way, so shut up.
Objection!
I agree with Renosuke and Kazuma. Truta, the damage is done. Yeah, it is. Too slow. Too slow. That's what he said there. Too slow. Damage is done.
Indeed it is, sir.
Too late. No, tard late. Trota. Too late. Couche-tard. Say, convenience store. Oh, Montreal. It's couche-tard. It's just open late. That's just what it's called. It's got a cute little owl. I've never been into a couche-tard. Every time I'm up there, I'm like, oh look, everywhere we go, there's a couche-tard. But I've never been to one. Mom, how could you let me not go to a couche-tard? My mom's so many episodes behind, she's gonna be like, I'm sorry I didn't take you to a couche-tard in your past, like, 24 years of life in, like, 6 days. Oui, there was a man who came to the park, and he said he was an inspector from Scotland Yard. However, he looked nothing like the man in the photograph. He was someone else. How can you be so sure? Because, to start with, his face was completely different. See, he's true. The man who came was a younger. His face was a clean-shaven, his eyes were sadder, his chin was thinner.
No resemblance whatsoever, then?
Anyway, I was not going to be fooled, so I took the obvious precaution and said to him, if you are really a detective, show us the proof.
See, the Capo here, he doesn't take a nonsense. No nonsense, eh? But he was well prepared. He said he had identification. Identification? You mean official police inspector's identification?
That is most unconvincing.
Sorry, my lord?
Counsel, no incognito inspector would offer his identification for inspection. It's quite out of the question.
Definitely. Why would he expose his true identity?
Clearly, the papers were fake. Certo, Capo, you are a genius. As we say in the Italia, it takes a thief to recognize another, eh?
And what happens after he announced that he was a detective?
We killed him. He became very annoying. He said, you're under investigation. So I took his paper from him and chased him out of the park. It was a fantastico, and look, here is identification.
So you stole it from the man?
He had it coming. He made us very scared. But he was not who he said he was.
Indeed, the person described does not appear to have behaved as a true inspector would. However, I believe it would be prudent for these identification papers to be entered into evidence.
But I like them. I want to be an inspector, eh? Eh, Capo?
Now, let us return to the witness's testimony.
Ugh, my elbows hurt more than usual today. Niv was fighting to light the UVB bar in her enclosure. I moved it up because she actually... I was like, Niv, you need to stop. I was like, Niv, stop. And she pulled it out of the rope that was hanging. It fell on her, and then she just like, help, mother. She just stared at me. I picked it up, and she just kind of stared at me. She's like, oh, yeah, shouldn't do that. I was like, all right, you gotta stop? She's like, yes. And then 5 minutes later, she's back at it again. So I tied it up with my hair tie, and I'll get some help to adjust it. I'm not the best with knots, like it's fine for now, but while I was crawling in there, I think I scraped up my elbows on the bricks. Speaking of, new episode of NivTube went up this past Monday. Go check out NivTube. Link should be on the homepage of YouTube for this channel and also in the community tab. Yes, it definitely looks fake, doesn't it? Out of interest, what name is given? Probably something just plucked out of the air. It's Tobias Gregson. Wait, what? This Scotland Yard insignia looks genuine to me. But how? And the department and identification number details are all correct as well. I thought it was gonna be the Hugh Boone that owns the apartment, but it's actually just literally just straight up Gregson's paperwork. Since when have you known those? Do you mean to say? I know it seems incredible, but yes, I think this is a genuine identification book issued by Scotland Yard. But that's unbelievable. Is this the real thing after all? Alright, so... They haven't told us much we didn't already know. Alright, let's circle back around. So we pried out that piece of evidence. So most likely it shouldn't be that information that we have to press again. Let's see. I'm assuming we're going to present the book. You can just present the book, YOLO. Well, actually, we didn't thoroughly inspect it. I didn't check on this side. No, I want to grab this thing. There we go. No. Okay, alright. That would be something that would be much easier with the Switch, just little Joy-Con things.
Objection!
Alright, so it is presenting here. It just seemed to fit the most. I was like, hey, usually you would think you wouldn't pry the piece of evidence and use it on the same statement, but it did seem to fit the best. I wonder if I could ask you to examine this identification book very closely, Miss Lestrade.
Why, Miss Lestrade? What is your intention here, Counsel?
Is this really a fake, or is it genuine? That's the question. Which we can't answer ourselves.
Objection.
Don't be ridiculous. No Scotland Yard detective would allow his or her identification to be stolen.
Hold it. That is the boss's, no question about it.
It can't be.
As I suspected. The undercover detective who attended the Redheaded League's enrollment on the day in question was the real Inspector Gregson, carrying out an incognito investigation. Zutalo!
Hold
But the boss said his identification stolen. He would have reported it straight away. I mean, he was always on at me about it. You lose your sum up, reported it once, he'd say. Could it be, then, that the inspector was physically unable to report it? Physically, eh? What are you saying?
Unable to. You're not suggesting.
Yes, it's quite possible that he was killed before he had a chance to report his identification stolen.
No. Hold on.
The defense posits that the victim was killed the day before his body was discovered at a different location. Do you two have anything to say about that? Whee! I know nothing! Whee! I don't know nothing! Whee! Pull yourself together, Peppino. Mon Dieu, you can behave a little more like a master criminal than that, no? Whee! Now I wish I had returned to Italia! Stop crying, Peppino, please! Otherwise I mean, stop your whining and start talking! You go, Gina!
Well, I believe the court.
I know nothing!
But you will tell everything. Or face the worst possible outcome.
Nah.
You will dry your eyes and testify again? About these identification papers and the precise circumstances on which you came by them?
For crying out loud! They're both just crying. The truth is, we took a prisoner and kept him for the night at a secret hideout. Even though I didn't think he was a real detective, I was too scared to let him go that day, just in case. We took the man's identification from him and shut him out in the room next to us. There might have been a little tussle, but we did him no harm, and the next morning we let him go. They spent us a night in a nice room. It was a nothing like prison, really. Ayyyy. So they kidnapped Gregson.
This is outrageous. You imprisoned the man.
But no, no. It was not like prison. He was very comfortable and calm and happy. Hey, Capo. It was never part of my plan, I swear it. Nova, so you think it was my fault, eh? Just because I got the date of the ferry wrong. By one little day. I do not think it was your fault, Peppino, I know it. No, per favor, Capo, it was not fair.
You shall have plenty of time for squabbling back at the prison, gentlemen.
Oof, I don't believe this. How could they have been real detective?
Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination.
So on the day before the incident, Gregson spent the night confined in this pair's hideout.
Hold it!
Do you realize what you're saying? You have to believe me, I never intended for that to happen. And I'm sure the detective did not intend it either.
Do you think? What? There was nothing else I could do. See, nothing else. This was the first crime for the Capo. He was at the end of his wits. I have told you before, Peppino, that is not the way to describe a criminal mastermind.
What about this hideout of yours?
An old empty house behind the park on Lime Street. We rented the place for 2 days. It was an inspired idea by the Capo.
An impulsive idea, I would say.
No, not impulsive, inspired, eh, Capo?
What am I supposed to say to that, Peppino?
And it was in the house described that you confined Inspector Gregson, was it?
Oui. But you have to remember, I was under the impression that he was a pretender, not a real inspector.
That doesn't quite add up, though. If you didn't think that the man was a real inspector, there would have been no reason to take him prisoner, would there?
No, you are right. But we couldn't be completely certain.
Hold it!
Too scared? Why?
Because, why had he come back to the park? We didn't know. There was a chance that he had seen through my plan. And if that wasn't the case, he would go straight to the police station to blow out the whistle on us. But even if he was just feigning to be an inspector, he was up to no good, huh? Without a doubt.
And I think most people would agree that it's you two who are up to no good.
Well, see, you may be right. Hey, Capo? The point is, we were not able to escape from England immediately. That is why we had no choice but to take the man prisoner.
What I don't understand is why the inspector felt the need to show you his identification in the first place.
See, I asked myself the same question. We were writing down the names and addresses of all the people who took 5 shillings from that day. I have forgotten what name he said, but the address, it startled me. See, address Scotland Yard, Homicide Division, he said. What? He probably didn't like your face, Peppino. Anyway, and it was not rude, just politely asked him why he had said it. And that's when he started to say he was an inspector. Not long afterwards, he took out his identification.
What was Inspector Gregson playing at? Tell the court what happened next. You took him back to your hideouts, you say.
See, we did that.
The part of me wonders, this doesn't make sense. Why would Gregson show the identification? What if, alright, hold up, what if Gossip killed Gregson, stole Gregson's identity, got beat up by these two, that's why he looks all beat up, and that's why he didn't go home to his wife, because he was held prisoner by these two. Huh? A little bit out there, but I don't know. That seems to make as much sense to me as why Gregson would just be like, yeah, here's my official document showing that I'm an inspector. I don't know.
Hold it!
I still think Gossip is Daily Vigil, but we'll see. I mean, I hope we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't just never get resolved. That being this identification book here, correct?
See, that is the one!
What made you believe that it was a forgery?
I never seen a real one, of course. But they were so suspicious, this man. Allora, I was thinking, it must be false, eh, Capo? Oui, it is just as Peppino has said. We were convinced it was not genuine. And so together, the hilarious brothers, we took them in captive. And all we did was shove them inside a locked room. Then we made preparations to transport all of the money.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Hold it!
What do you mean by a little tussle, exactly?
Both, it was nothing, just a minor incident. The false inspector, he was a real piece of work, eh, Capo?
What happened?
Why, it was a disaster. We give him a nice room, and what does he do, huh? In the middle of the night, he tries to escape through the ventilator. Can you blame him? We chased him, bien sûr, and we caught him again. Can you blame us? Wait, you didn't shoot the man in your haste, did you? Who does you think we are? Well, of course not. I simply got hold of him again and took him back to the room. That is a horrible animation. Dude, stop eating in the courtroom. See, it looks like he's gonna puke, but he's just so enthralled eating his pasta. Disgusting!
Excuse me.
Now I want pasta. Mr. De Rossi, is something wrong? Hey, me! Something Mr. De Rousseau just said seemed to make you, well, it seemed to make you act even more strangely than usual. What was that all about? Ryunosuke asking the good questions. Cavolo, at times like that, you don't know what to have the Capo after you, believe me. And I speak up from a personal experience. Personal experience? That is enough, Pepinos. There is no need to say more. The truth is, the night before we put the Redheaded League plan into action, I was scared. It was not a threat to the Capo, but I tried to run away. It's a shame you didn't manage it. But the Capo here, he came after me like at the turbine, huh? And he dragged me back to the house, kicking and screaming. And I still have the bruises to prove it, eh, Capo?
Bruises, you say?
Yeah, alright. Woo! Allie is big brain. It was gossip. Gossip was pretending to be Gregson. And he got his ass kicked. I knew it. I've been known. That means Sussheart has to be real, right? Sussheart has to be real. Right? Just purely because I big brain this, that means I have to have the ultimate big brain, right? Do you wanna see, You wanna see my fantastical bruises? That is enough now, Peppino. No one to look at any part of you. What not to do, I show you, I don't. I show you what I don't. You do, now. Allora, if everybody wants to see, then I do it. Nico, you see? Still very visible, eh? That red ring around your neck. You got that when you were dragged back to the house? See, the Capo, sometimes he is very rough, and I said that's enough. Peppino's neck is nothing to do with what we are talking about here. You have my word.
Yes. What is your opinion, counsel?
About this red ring around Mr. De Rossi's neck, I wonder. Doesn't matter. Yeah. It's important. Mr. De Rossi, I'm going to have to ask you to amend your testimony with details about that mark on your neck. Hey, Capo, you see? Everyone is interested in what I say, huh?
Very well. You'll amend your testimony as requested, Mr. De Rossi.
See, if you really want to know. He tried to escape, but the Capo put the collar on him and dragged him back like what he did to me, see?
Hold it!
Are you saying that red mark was caused by... See, a big collar made from a leather. A leather collar? Is this true, Mr. De Rousseau? What? We had this empanada at home when I was younger. It is a souvenir from that time with a very strong chain. A strong chain. And you put that around your friend's neck? I'm sorry, I was so angry that he was leaving me alone. You did not have to tie the chain to the leg of the bed, though. I would not have tried to run again. You didn't do that to Inspector Gregson as well, did you? Treat other people are equal, is the Capo his motto, eh? It's starting to sound a lot more like a prison all of a sudden. The Capo is a tough, but the Capo is a rough. I shouldn't have done it. So, the following morning, when you released the inspector, He had the red thing around his neck, just like a me. Peppino, s'il vous plaît, leave it down. Now you know, huh? The Capo here, you don't want to tangle with him, eh? But for the inspector, he's not so bad.
Objection!
No. 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 I just want to look at the people. Yeah. Totally the inspector. That's totally Gregson, huh?
In a number of ways, you say?
Miss Click Central.
Objection!
So the day before his body was discovered, Inspector Gregson was taken prisoner while working incognito. No, it was not like that. It was hardly a prison. It was an invitation to stay. It was only. However you describe it, there's one glaring inconsistency that remains.
What inconsistency is this, counsel?
Now, I would ask the court to look closely at this photograph of the victim, Inspector Gregson. You will see that there is no red ring visible around his neck. But that makes no sense. It was me who took the collar off the man in the morning. And I saw the red bruises on his neck, just like I have. Given that the mark is still clearly visible on this witness's neck, we'd expect to see bruising on the victim, who was put in the collar more recently than Mr. DeRossi.
Indeed, that is most peculiar.
But what do we tell you, huh? We say this from the beginning, many times. Oui, Peppino is right. The man in the photograph. He is someone different to the man we held captives that night.
Hold on.
It would appear then that on the day before the incident, the man who visited the park on Lime Street posing as an incognito inspector was not Inspector Gregson at all.
Objection!
If that's true, however, how do you explain the inspector's identification? This is a genuine identification book issued by Scotland Yard. It's inconceivable that someone could have stolen such an important item from the inspector. The prosecution made that assertion itself.
And we also know that the inspector had made a note about the Redheaded League in his diary for that day, which surely means we can't divorce the two events completely.
The inconsistency noted by the defense is most troubling. If it were really Inspector Gregson whom these two red-headed gentlemen encountered, the fact that no bruising can be seen around his neck defies explanation.
But equally, if they actually encountered an imposter, how did that person come to be in possession of the real inspector's identification?
Does the defense have some plausible explanation, counsel?
The whole thing defies explanation.
It is for precisely these occasions that we keep meticulous notes in the court record, Mr. Naruto, because those are the facts, and the facts cannot lie.
No, the facts can't lie. Even when they point to something so incredible, it's almost unbelievable. Well, my lord, the true identity of the person who turned up in the park for the Redheaded League's enrollment is revealed by information in the court record, I believe.
Good gracious!
Very tantalizing, Mr. Naruto. So, why don't you help us all to see whatever truth it is that you've apparently seen? Who exactly was this inspector that appeared before Mr. De Rousseau and Mr. De Rossi? See, stuff like this, I sometimes think these games don't make sense to me, because I feel like that's super obvious to me, is that Gossip had the red ring around his neck the whole time.
but it's leading, oh, you gotta find someone else in the court records who we've seen someone with it. It's like, okay. Yeah, I figured that out myself, but somehow we are expected to look at the picture of Mr. Aspen's dead body and see that the blood dripped down instead of all around. And there was no help with that. Like, I could've used some help with that! I figured this one out. I figured this one out before we found out that the Capo likes to put collars on people and drag them. Hey, Capo! No, it seems incredible, I admit it. The undeniable facts point to only one thing. Since no bruising can be seen on the victim's neck, the person who these two red-headed men took prisoner that day cannot have been Inspector Gregson. In other words, your whole argument up to now has been a waste of time.
Objection!
No, Cosmo, it has not. On the contrary, I haven't finished. What? There's no bruising on the victim's neck, so the question immediately posed next is, who exactly was this man in the park on Lime Street found to be carrying Inspector Gregson's identification? See, that's right! We tell the same story every time! Whoever this man is, the Capo dragged him from a pillar to a post with a dog collar. Mon Dieu, Peppino, I was not so harsh as you say, huh? So was that the false inspector, eh? Who was he? Clearly, the defense has an idea about that. About the true identity of the man who these two imprisoned that night.
I must ask the counsel for the defense to elaborate post-haste. Who did the witnesses encounter in the park posing as Inspector Gregson?
Gossip.
Take that! Goodness me! Isn't that...
One of the witnesses who was in the stand in this very courtroom earlier today. A nameless man whose only occupation appears to be peddling hearsay to passersby.
Objection!
What on earth would a street seller be doing with a police inspector's identification papers? Witnesses, is this the man or not? What has happened to his lip? See, this man is not for the Redheaded League, eh? He's looking for the Twisted Lip League, eh? Perhaps rather than making such a rash claim next time, you should bite your lip instead. It seems improbable, yes, but one undeniable fact remains. During his testimony earlier, I noted something around the man's neck. A red ring of bruising. Eh? What? The defense demands that Mr. Gossip be brought back to the stand.
Order, bailiff! Bring the aforementioned witness back into the courtroom. Immediately. Well, I never. An undeniable ring of bruising, indeed. And identical to that of the witness beside him.
Now what's going on here, eh? I always had this, me. It's a birthmark, isn't it? A birthmark, you say? I assume the reason you've been recalled to the stand has been explained to you. Hey, some up about Inspector again. But I'm telling you, you've got it all wrong as usual. You're denying it all knowledge of it. Well, of course I am. Are you trying to kill me with all this nonsense, eh? Well, at least you'll have more stories to peddle back on Fresno Street, won't you? Now, we're going to need you to testify again. And you, Mr. De Rousseau and Mr. De Rossi, I'm sure you'll cooperate, won't you? Do we have any choice? We are in a bigger trouble, eh, Capo?
That's quite enough dilatory chatter. Proceed with the testimony.
The man who claimed to be an inspector that day was definitely not this man. He's right, see, you think we would forget all these grand lips, huh? I never leave Fresno Street, alright? I have no interest in any Redheaded League. I'm all alone in the world, me. I have no kinfolk or nothing. Why would I be involved in something like that? Just look at me, eh? Does it look like I could carry off a disguise of the face like this?
It would certainly appear that we have the wrong man.
What have I been telling you, huh? There is no need for this pointless testimony.
Ugh. That's right. I'm just a simple peddler, remember? Fresno Street's all I know. How would I have come by? A police inspector's identification book, eh? Well, yes. That's hard to explain, but...
A brief cross-examination, I think, counsel. Very brief.
Ugh. Isn't there anyone in this courtroom who thinks I might be onto something? I do, Reno's Kane. I stand steadily at your side as always, Mr. Naruto!
Hold it!
So you say, but how can you be quite so certain?
There is no need to hit your hand on the desk, monsieur. Surely the reason is obvious, no? Because I have never before seen a lips like this.
Nevertheless, there's a clear red mark around Mr. Gossip's neck. And it looks very much like that left behind on the neck of your colleague by your prized collar.
Mon Dieu, with your words, it is like you tried to wring my neck. It does look very much like my neck, though, eh?
No, this is a birthmark, lad. Biggest lips in London and a neck to die for. Aye, they broke the mold when they made me.
For the first time in my life. And I feel lucky to have been born with red hair.
And I thought being Japanese made you stand out in London. So you maintain you've never seen this man before?
Oui, c'est ça. I swear to it by the flames of my hair.
So fierce pride has outgrown the frustration with your hair now, has it?
Hold it!
Well, yes, I don't imagine I'll forget those lips in a hurry either.
That is what I am saying. For some reason, it makes me want to eat. How did Fabian call it? An eclair. You know, I've never seen their hair as black as yours are before either.
Likewise, I've never seen red hair like yours until I came to Britain.
See, maybe it's a nationality trait, huh? Maybe all the people from this immense country have a grander lips.
No, lad. I was born right here on Fresno Street, and I've never left.
No, that is the problem, see?
So you definitely didn't go to the park on Lime Street that day, Mr. Gossip. Now, how many times do you want me to say it, eh? I hate that this man's lips has become a plot point.
Hold it!
So, you'd heard of the Redheaded League, had you? You don't get a name like Gossip for nothing, eh? It's my business to know what's going off in town. And I sold that tasty tidbit to a fair few redheads that came past me. And just between us, I even got sandwiched to cough up for it. Well, he does have a very red nose, if that counts. Who knows? But as you can see, my own hair's not got a hint of red in it. And in any case, Fresno Street's my patch. You won't catch me sidling up.
Is that so?
Sidling off to some other part of town. No, sir, not likely.
Excuse me.
Is that so? Mr. De Rousseau? Oh, oui. Can I help you? Mr. Gossip's words just now lead you to remember something relevant, perhaps?
It was the other day when I was looking for a place near the park, a small house or something.
To be the headquarters of your Redheaded League, yes.
I visited an housing agent on Lime Street, and there I saw him. This man was paying money to the agent.
What? Mr. Gossip with a housing agent?
Oui, he had some kind of contract in his hand, and they were clearly discussing terms.
But no, you're mistaken, chum. I've never left Fresno Street, me, like I said before. You've mistaken me for someone else, someone with the same face.
No, the Capo is right. I remember the tattoo. He was paying the man with the banknotes.
With notes. 100% this guy's daily vigil. And has been lying to his wife for 10 years. And just bumming out on the street during the day, pretending he works at the prison. And he did. He got kidnapped for the night, and that's why he didn't come home. It's because he was held hostage by these two nut jobs. That wasn't me. Okay, Shaggy. I was curious why this a man with the dirty clothes had so much money. So I looked at the name on the papers. And then what name was written? Mr. Gossip? No, Mr. Daily Vigil. No, this a man. He lies. He tells you that he has no name. But in fact, his name is Hugh Boone. Oh. Hugh Boone, huh? It's better than Mr. Gossip, I think. See? No. Ooh. I'm a peddler of tidbits of information, like I said, on Fresno Street, and that's that. I don't much like folk talking about my personal life.
Indeed. And it is not the intention of the court to invade the privacy of witnesses. Very well. I shall respect your wishes, sir. The aforementioned name shall be redacted from all court records of this trial, assuming no objections.
Objection! I object to that. I'm sorry, my lord, but the defense does object. Because the name just mentioned has a very deep significance to this case.
Good gracious! Do you similarly object, Prosecutor Sogi?
As it happens, my lord, that particular name has already been mentioned during today's proceedings.
Well, I never. In what capacity?
Hugh Boone! The name of the leaseholder of the room! Let me put this very simply. The victim's body was discovered in your rented room. I suggest, sir, that you start talking. Well, all right. I suppose that might be the case, eh? So your real name is Hugh Boone? Well, just between us, I don't like to blow me on trumpet, but there's no finer peddler of tidbits in town. So I happen to be able to afford a grubby little room in a falling down backstreet townhouse.
You do?
And once every 6 months, I go and pay the rent to the agent on Lime Street. I remember now. There was 2 vulgar redheads in there last time. Hey, if either of us is a vulgar, it is not a me! Sink again, Pepino. Pepino. I like the name, Pepino. Why didn't you bring this up before? It's like I told you already. I don't like talking about my personal life. I'm a tidbit peddler as far as everyone else is concerned. No fuss.
You will update your testimony to include this most surprising revelation, Mr. Boone.
If I must. So the leaseholder Scotland Yard has been looking for since the body was discovered. Has been here under our noses all along. Oh, and then we just get to present the picture, right?
Hold it!
So, you live in that room presumably, do you? No, I don't live there. What do you think? There's no bed, is there? Just a desk. Then, why would you want to rent it? Well, I don't think I should have to say, really. Then how about the notice board in there? Which was covered from top to bottom in confidential documents only the police should have had access to. No, that board's not mine. The inspector must have brought it along. It's only the other bits and bobs that belong to me. The desk and the chair and that. People don't generally carry enormous notice boards around with them. The real question is, why was Inspector Gregson killed in there? In your room? Well, obviously, I have not the faintest idea. I mean, it's causing me no end of bother, to be honest. It seems to me that Gossip, I'm sorry, Mr. Boone, would rather as little is known about his room as possible for some reason. Yes, it does come across that way, and more importantly, knowing that the scene of the crime is actually his room completely changes things. In particular, there's one part of his testimony that's really bothering me now. That's how I'm finally going to undo this man. Yeah, we present the picture of his wife. Because your wife is expensive and you're broke. And if you have no kinfolk, as you put it, then explain why it is that you have that among the sparse furnishings we found this photograph in the room. And I presume, as you've been renting the room, that this photograph belongs to you, does it not? Oh, well. Mr. Boone, drop the pretense and tell the court exactly who you really are. I don't know what you mean. I'm a peddler. I keep telling you so. You really don't need to bother with me. Please, just leave it alone. As the man says, leave it alone. Whatever the truth is about this man's life, it has no bearing on this case. Because it's simply not possible that he impersonated Inspector Gregson.
Objection!
How can you be so sure? Just look at the man. No amounts of disguise could ever hide those unmissable features.
Objection!
But what if we were to look at the other way around? What do you mean?
Yes, counsel, what do you mean?
Well, there's no denying that Mr. Boone's lip is very prominent indeed. But consider the possibility that his prominent lip itself is part of an elaborate disguise. Then hiding that prominent feature, in other words, revealing his true face, would make an utterly impenetrable disguise. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Hugh Boone? Just call him Daily Vigil. You should have just called him Daily Vigil, right there.
Good witness, are you still hiding the truth from this court?
That's why he has to rent the room. He's like, oh, sweetie, I gotta stay overnight at the prison for a few days. I'll be back. If that's a disguise, then underneath it, his true identity must be... Yes, that's right. There's really only one person he could really be. My lord, the defense believes it can reveal Mr. Boone's true identity to the court. No, please, no.
Very well then, counsel. What is the true identity of this peddler who goes simply by the name of Gossip on the street? Take that!
Your real name is actually Mr. Vigil, isn't it? Mr. Daily Vigil. Yeah.
I don't recall that name, counsel. Who is this Mr. Vigil?
It's a name I encountered yesterday, my lord. It has to do with a certain client of Mr. Herlock Sholmes. A young gentlewoman came to the detective asking him to locate her missing husband. And the woman in this photograph, in fact, this is Mrs. Vigil. What? From what I understand, you haven't returned home since the night before the inspector was found dead. But of course, on that night, you were being held captive by the two Redheaded League men. And last night, you were put up by the prosecution service in preparation for testifying in this trial, because we've been led to believe that you, Miss Venus, and Mr. Sandwich were all homeless. Being important witnesses in this case, we needed to know where we could find you, of course. And that explains why you've not only been unable to return home, but also unable to contact your wife, who's been beside herself with worry, waiting for you at the Vigil residence. Now, just you hold on a minute. I don't have the first idea. What I'm talking about, really, it's a simple enough matter to confirm my suspicions. All we have to do is pull off that disguise. No, please.
Bailiff, bring soap, a sponge, and a wash bowl at once. Mr. De Rousseau and Mr. De Rossi, you'll restrain the witness.
Is that legal? Oui, my lord. Oui, my lord. See, my lord? Oh yeah, they've had practice with this. No, stop. Get off me, please, stop. No, don't. Knew it.
Well, we are now seeing your true features, I presume.
Lift your head, sir, so the court can see your face.
It would appear that the defense counsel's assertion was entirely correct. This has been a very elaborate deception. So, witnesses, tell the court, have you seen this man before?
I don't believe it, but... See, there is no question. This is the inspector we saw in the park.
Extraordinary!
On the day of the Redheaded League enrollment, the man claiming to be Inspector Gregson who appeared before Mr. DeRousseau and Mr. DeRossi in the park was you disguised as the inspector, or rather, was you posing as the inspector in no disguise at all. Mr. Vigil was formerly employed as the chief warden at Barclay Prison.
The chief warder? Then your career had promise. Why would you quit? Quite possibly have become the future governor of the prison. What on earth have you been doing peddling tittle-tattle on Fresno Street?
Well, it's been 10 years since Mr. Vigil worked at the prison. 10 years. I'm really dreadfully sorry about all of this. Yes, it's true. I am Daily Vigil. And you were the chief warder at Barclay Prison 10 years ago. So where did Mr. Hugh Boone come from? Boone is the other me. It's a name I invented.
Well, evidently there's a great deal under the surface here.
I'll explain everything. And I'll tell you just how wretched my life has become. As you say, it was 10 years ago now that my employment at Barclays as Barclay's chief warder came to an end. It was spooky music. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times are hard in London, and I found no suitable engagements at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street. But your wife appears to know nothing of this. She still maintains that you are the chief warder at Barclay Prison. I was utterly determined that my wife should not know about my failings, which is why I've never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Boone, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street. In the scene of the very crime we're investigating. Yes, that's right. A place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 as a squalid peddler, and transform myself back every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about town before returning home. And that quickly became my daily routine. I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room, but that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us this in the first place? I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons, and without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. And I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them. So instead, you decided to conceal your occupation from them? Yes. I made such a terrible mess of everything. Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to passing gentlemen, even at 6 pence apiece, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as chief warder at the prison.
Very true. To have kept your family in comfort despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment.
That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson. What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth? It was some years after I'd invented Boone and begun my other life as a street seller. The inspector, that is, recognized me one day.
Do you mean to say the victim was an acquaintance of yours?
I knew him from my time working at the prison. When he saw what I'd become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. And from that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then one day, He asked me if I would carry out a secret assignment for him. A secret assignment? What was it? I was to impersonate the inspector. What? Impersonate him? We always met in that little room so the inspector could brief me. Visit Orix's tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress! It was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people on those occasions. He would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that that Inspector Gregson had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially.
The Scotland Yard inspector willingly relinquished his identification into your care with intent to deceive. That, as I'm sure I need not point out, is a very serious criminal offense.
But why? What was the point of you impersonating him? I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me on numerous occasions. Now remember, Vigil, I need your solemn word. You don't blab about this to anyone, all right? Ever. Even if I end up a croaker. In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of a second office for him. So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on Lime Street was really... Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my boon disguise, and then went as instructed to the park, armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away. So what was Gregson up to? Well, it would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case.
Explain yourself, Prosecutor Sogi.
My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location on the day before his corpse was discovered, at the hands of those two Redheaded League men when they imprisoned the inspector. He tried to do the desk slap, but then his hands hurt too much. But no, that can't be. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day, it was me. Oh my goodness! Finally, we have a clarity. We had nothing to do with the murder of the inspector. And merci, Monsieur de la Défense, for proving it. What? Ah!
Order! Indeed, it would appear that we have reached a de facto conclusion of sorts. These witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim. As proven, somewhat ironically, by the defense.
Ugh.
I hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
Hold it!
Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I would like to pose one further question to the witnesses. Cosma?
What question, counsel?
It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time. 10 years ago. The execution of the professor, Genshin Asogi. I want to know exactly what your involvement was. Oh. Answer me, man.
One moment, counsel. Is this related to the current case?
Naturally. It is the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are inextricably linked.
Does the defense concur, counsel?
Kazuma, you're not yourself. You're not as calm and collected as usual.
Poor Kazuma-sama. No wonder he's acting this way. Mr. Vigil's memories of what happened 10 years ago would tell the tale of Genshin Isogi's last moments. His own father.
I know. I do understand that. But even so... Prosecutor Isogi, do you genuinely believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death? I need you to trust me, please. Very well. Then the defense has no objection.
I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness.
The truth is, I remember very little of that time. You've forgotten. I'm sorry to say, yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But for some peculiar reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy.
Does that not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry?
Well, 10 years is a long time, but to have forgotten the reason why he left such an important job.
Yes, you're right. And not only that, Mr. Vigil's claim contradicts what we already know. The human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily, which is why we have a tendency to wrap it up for protection. Sorry, the human spirit. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean. When we experience pain and suffering that we feel unable to bear, we block it out, obliterate it from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface. And when they do, that fragile spirit may finally be crushed. But I really don't...
Kazuma-sama!
But if it must be crushed, then so be it, because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out, one way or another. Right, now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth, at any cost. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. But should I? Should I present the evidence or not? Yeah, alright, let's pick our best friend, who is in a lot of pain and suffering, wants to know whether his dad really was a serial killer and got framed and executed for something he didn't do, or this dude that's been lying to his wife for 10 years. I'm gonna pick Kazuma. Kazuma's our buddy. Kazuma needs us to stand by him and help him guide in the right direction. This dude needs to stop lying to his wife and kids for 10 years. How? I'm amazed, honestly, that he's gotten away with it. It's like Ayyyy Vigil must have the attention span of a goldfish to not notice anything at all. Nothing at all. Didn't read a single newspaper about prison break by Chief Warden at the Barclay prison gets fired. Like, how do you not notice? This is kind of a big deal. Anyways, I'm Team Kazuma. Kazuma's in pain, we gotta help him. I have no idea how this is going to go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to look at this. Evidence that clearly contradicts your version of events.
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. Well, yes. In other words, you claim to have left the post of chief warder of your own volition. Well, yes, of course. Why? Tell me, do you remember seeing this document before? No, I don't. This is a dismissal notice ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. A dismissal notice. And the name on the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil. What? What? It's mine. So you didn't resign from the prison service at all. For some reason, you were dismissed as chief warder from Barclay. No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation. The dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it? If you were forcibly dismissed, there must have been good reason. Clearly, you did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. Oh, we're unlocking some trauma here today, boys. The music. Ooh. I'm gonna just let this play for a little bit. According to the few remaining records, the final execution that you supervised was on 17th of June, 10 years ago. And on that day, something very serious took place at Barclay Prison. The 17th of June. Was that the professor's execution? Professor. As you were the chief warder at the time, it stands to reason. Now, you would have been present throughout the proceedings. It does sound familiar. And yet, that execution never took place. The convict, ostensibly executed earlier that day, later re-emerged from his grave. The convict came back to life. In the cemetery in the middle of the night, there was a witness. However, the witness claims that a moment after he saw the convict clambering out of his grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments. Yes. Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at the time, you must know the truth about what really happens. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, I know there are memories in your head that can explain what happened on the 17th of June 10 years ago. And now, it's time for you to drag them up. Mr. Vigil? Yes, the whole prison. It was complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane. Shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane.
Hold on! Do you mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of the time have returned?
My head, it's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, the screams. Oh my goodness! The papers. There were reports, articles about a man who'd seen a ghost. Yes, Enoch Drebber.
But surely those reports were exaggerated.
And there were traces at the scene. Traces of what? In Lowgate Cemetery, at plot 139, blood, lots of blood. That's where the man was buried, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there.
The depths of conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering.
I've reviewed the police records from that time extensively. A thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigating team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved.
Are you suggesting that a prison warder abetted the man's bid for freedom?
Yes, and I was suspected of doing it, of using that mass murderer's execution as a way to help him escape. You did what? I remember now. The horror of it all is coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the watchtower. I'm sorry, Daly. It's a serious business, but I can't help you now. As chief warder, you were responsible for overseeing the execution of 4A. Well, seems the fellas of Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words with you about it. You'd better pack your things, laddie. You're to attend in person. And as soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I knew, the professor, the most hated killer in our country's history. And I let him escape. I'm finished. My life is over. Nah. This is, we're watching trauma. Oh, he's not okay.
Hold her, bailiff, fetch a doctor at once. Court is adjourned for today with immediate effect.
So, with Mr. Vigil's collapse, proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Cosima, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
Ah! Oh, man. Just what is gonna be... I just want to know, how is this all gonna wrap up? What really is going on here with the professor case? Alright, so we're gonna get into investigation part 2 next time, but... I think we had called it last episode, right? I remember her saying that I bet Gossip is Mr. Vigil, just because of the hair curls. And I don't know, I mean, obviously that wasn't to be his real hair. Or perhaps he just made his hair dirty or something like that. I mean, we didn't really see them pull off a wig. The only thing that really fell off was his fake lip, but I'm assuming like his nose is completely different and stuff like that. But I saw that there, the similarity between the hair curls. I was like, interesting. But Gregson, you know, Gregson, see, the thing is that doesn't make sense. So it's thought that Daily Vigil here helped the professor escape from prison. And then somehow the professor still ended up in the cemetery and got shot. But, so there was a jailbreak, a successful jailbreak by the professor. And it's thought that Daily Vigil was the person responsible. But Gregson, who was the one who found key evidence that ended up implicating, supposedly, Cosmo's father, Genshin Impact, was found by Gregson. But Gregson still, after seeing the hardships that Daily Vigil was going through, wanted to help him out. So he figured he could use him for independent investigation. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's peddling information. So he's actually literally just a person that just does tips. So getting Gregson tips, finding out information for him, doing some, I guess, recon, and getting under people's, I guess, skin. I don't know, just finding out. So that way, I guess, Gregson, when Gregson does show up, they don't know what Gregson looks like. They wouldn't be, I guess, as suspicious of Gregson for whatever he's doing. So they shared that little place, and it became Gregson's second office. So they were on good terms. So if Gregson fully believed that Cosmo's father was the professor, and if Daily Vigil was the one that helped them get out of jail, then they wouldn't have been on good terms at all. I mean, I don't know that Gregson's necessarily someone to hold a grudge. Obviously, he just dislikes Sholmes because he thinks he's annoying. But I don't, you know, I mean, like, Gregson wouldn't, I mean, I don't think Gregson would hate the guy. I would think he would have a dislike for him, be like, if he honestly believed that that guy was guilty of murder of 5 people, being a serial killer. So the fact that they get along leads me further to my thought that Cosmo's father wasn't the culprit, and it was a big cover-up, which leads us back to Sus Heart. So, man, I am excited. It's not too late right now either, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on into investigation part 2 here. But this was, man, this has been a really good case. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in the next part of the investigation. I certainly hope it's not like 3 hours long or something. That would be annoying. But I'm excited to get into that next time, so. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Like I said, I think this is the last trial part for the Twisted Karma and his last bow. So I'm curious, or last bow maybe. I'm thinking bow. That would make more sense. Last bow. English is weird like that. I was thinking like bow and arrow. Last bow, I think, makes a lot more sense. It'd be like that. So I can pick up on stuff in the game, but I can't read. That's the trade-off. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It feels like it just keeps getting better and better and better. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. So let me know your thoughts on the happenings here in the comment section down below. Of course, I really hope you enjoyed this video. So if you did enjoy this part, this trial piece, sorry for screaming in the microphone so much. Dolphin noises. But if you guys liked it regardless, don't forget to go on ahead and hit that button down for me. And if you're not yet part of the Ayyyy Show family, I'd love to have you. Ayyy's Treasure Trove family would love to have you with me. So make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, before I get on out of here, I do have to give a big shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, you all, for going above and beyond with your support. I absolutely, truly do appreciate it. We do have 5 Ultimate Excavators: Jack Perez, Keith Mira, Mako, Mark Bardini, and Stephen Olivo, 2 Gemstone Miners, and then in Stephen Bly, and 1 Crystal Collector, John Michek. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, whether you're on a tier in which I say your name at the end of every video or not. Really, really do appreciate it, so thank you so much. But with that does it here for this episode. Man, you guys, I can't believe it's been 36! Tomorrow we'll have 37, and that should finish up here, Twisted Karma. And then on Sunday we do have an Ayyyy chat, so if we got a big cliffhanger, I do apologize. Y'all gonna have to wait till Monday. But with that does it for me here in this one. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I hope you'll tune in next time as we delve even deeper to the mysteries behind this professor case. I hope that we can release... I mean, we can't release Gregson, obviously, because unfortunately Gregson's already dead. But Cosmo and Van Zeeks, find out what truly happened, give them closure. Maybe Cosmo, his heart will start healing, you know, once he finds out the truth. Because, I mean, that must... I can't even imagine what it would feel like. Just being like... Because Cosmo's older. Cosmo's older than Susato. I don't know how older. 6 or so years? I want to say 6 or so. So... be like, oh, okay, my dad's going on a study tour. That's sad, but he'll come back, right? It's like, hey, yeah, Cosmo, by the way, your dad's never coming back. He got executed for being a serial killer. I don't even know what that would feel like. You know what I mean? How many years has he lived in, like, whether it be shame, thinking he did it, or disbelief, like, going through the stages and just not understanding? So I don't know. I think Steven was pointing out in the comments, Stephen Olivo, that he hopes it doesn't turn out that, like, Cosmo's motive is revenge. I don't know that revenge is necessarily the right word for it. I can see how they're trying to spin it, like Cosmo's angry and Cosmo sliced up the wax corpse and stuff, the wax model of the corpse. I think Cosmo here is just, he wants to know what happened, because there are a lot of questions that just don't seem to make sense, and Scotland Yard's like, well, that's it, right? We killed somebody. Said it was the professor. No one knows what he looks like. So as long as someone doesn't keep doing it, the people will believe that the professor's dead, right? Which is, to me, implies that it's not. You know, I don't necessarily believe that, oh, it's to protect international relations. We gotta hide it because, oh, it's a Japanese guy. Convenient. I think whoever did it, as long as they stop doing it, it's as if they executed the killer, but as long as the person stops doing it, then it, you know? I don't know, man. We'll find out next time. Yeah, another sus heart rant at the end of the episode. I tried wrapping this thing on up. I can't control myself, guys. I can't control it. I'm too hype. Too hype. But yes, that does it for me here. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Take care, stay safe, and hope to catch you in the next one. Bye.